Hey everyone, you are listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am your host, Jay Scherr, and I am super excited today. I've got a fantastic guest in the studio with me today. You all know him. You all love him. Let me go ahead and quickly introduce him to you. It is the one and only President of Flagler Broadcasting. It is Mr. David Ayers. David, it is great to see you. Thank you for being here in the studio with me today on the show.
Well, I see you in here with everybody else, so it's nice to be invited in. So thank you. I love your show. You do a great job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, interestingly, you have been, we've actually recorded, I believe, twice together. You were on the show once before where we really dug more into your personal story, which was highly interesting. And then the second time, you actually interviewed me. So you kind of turned the mics around on me. And that was a lot of fun too. I thought today, and I specifically wanted to talk to you, I thought today with everything that's going on in not only our community, our nation, and beyond, a lot of high emotions. There's a lot of angst, and, you just get that feeling in the air of stress and concern and, what's going to happen tomorrow? Do we have a future in front of us? All those kinds of things. So I thought today we would spend some time just really talking through our emotions and how we tend to respond in challenging times. So let me first kind of frame the conversation, and then we'll see where it goes, right? So no specific script to this. It's really just an open conversation. So kind of part one, if you will, I'm thinking about, those emotions and responses, right? How we respond to difficulty, how we respond to emotional crises, things like that. Then the second part would be taking personal responsibility and what that looks like. So whether you're a leader of a business, the leader of a family, the leader in a community, what does taking personal responsibility look like? And then the third piece to this would be focusing on a positive future, why that's so important, and what happens when we lose hope or don't have a grasp on what positive things can happen tomorrow and beyond. So, makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are really the three key areas. So let's start with where we are today, all the different things that are going on. You see it, I see it, I sense it. We see a lot of animosity out there. And I just sense that people are having a really difficult time trying to figure out how to respond to one another. Well, just give me a sense of what you're seeing from your perspective.
Mental overload, number one.
Okay.
We're bombarded with things that really don't have any effect on our life, and yet we absorb them like it does, and then we respond to them, and we get angst, and we get all these emotions, and we get depressed, and then because of that, we engage with friends or coworker or family members, and all that angst is brought to the table, and then suddenly, we don't like each other because of I have different angst than you have, or whatever the whole thing is. So It's kind of like, I think everybody just needs to stop, stop and think about, be your own parent, in your own mind, and control what you're really thinking about and what you believe in. Is it really important? Mm-hmm. And while something on the other side of the world, we care about that, sure, but it has no effect on your life. So our job is to be in control of our own lives and not carry the weight of international politics on us here, because that makes us less effective to our family and our friends and our business and what we do by carrying all that weight, which for some reason we feel like we're obligated to, and we're not.
So you used a term to really kind of kick this off, which I think is a really good one, mental overload. And I think, David, there's a point at which it's just too much for us to be able to manage all of that and deal with, economics and dealing with our families and getting our kids to school and, all the other stuff that happens in life, running our businesses, etc. And I think when that mental overload, to use that term, sets in, it creates really a ripple effect that is not a positive ripple effect. So what I've seen, and I would agree with much of what you said, one of the things that I see is it really begins to impact relationships. It impacts our conversations. It impacts our ability to have good, meaningful conversations that move us forward. So as opposed to finding commonality, or as opposed to finding things that we can agree on, because certainly there are things, we tend to move in the opposite direction. And it seems like almost any comment that's made incites some sort of reaction, and it's a negative reaction. And I want to talk about social media for a moment, because we're in the media space, right? And you know this, I know this, many people who are listening right now know this, but we tend to lose sight of it at times, and that is around algorithms. If I believe something in particular, whatever it is, I mentioned something in a post, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, you name it, any of the platforms, my feed will provide me like information, and my world becomes that bubble. It's like an echo chamber. So whatever I believe, that's what I'm going to see, and I'm not going to see anything else beyond that, right? How do you think social media is impacting the conversation today, and how it's affecting our emotions and how we respond to what's happening in this community and beyond?
Well, I've used the word a lot of time, cognitive bias. If we're all we seek information that supports what we believe. We don't seek information that's contrary to what we believe. But that's human nature. And I think that's the way God made us, because God wanted us to have different tribes. This is, I don't really think of it's religious. But I think that's the truth to it. So if we all thought the same way, if we were all Republican, we were all Democrat, we were all Christian, we were all Jews, we were all everything, the species would not survive. So it works not just with us, but all species. So that's a good thing. The pain and suffering in human beings is created all, for the most part, within our own minds. So we create our own pain by what we think and what we believe, and most of what we think and believe is usually wrong.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because that cognitive bias, that's wired into us, right? That's a psychological term, but it is a truism that, and I'm just going to restate what you just said because it's an important one, in that no matter what we believe, and I'm not saying whether one person's beliefs are correct where another person's are wrong. All I'm saying is that whatever you believe, Mr. and Mrs. Listener, you will go to the ends of the earth to find the proof to support that belief. That is just how we are wired. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it really it slants our view on the world, because if we're only seeing one perspective and we're not able to open ourselves up to other ideas or other beliefs, then it really closes us off to the best ideas. Think about it from a business perspective, okay? I'm just going to take that for one moment. If I'm a business owner and I think that only my ideas are the right ideas, and you, as my team around me, no matter what you say, your thoughts and your perspectives don't align with mine, so therefore they can't be right. If that was my approach, guess what? I shut my business down from being able to iterate, from being able to create and generate the best products, the best ideas, the best services, because I don't have all the answers, right? But if I can't admit that, and if I can't open myself up to listening and learning from others, I'm missing a huge opportunity. We do the same thing in other areas of life. And so I'm and where I want to go with the conversation is, okay, recognizing that this is where we are today, and it's real, right? I mean, you mentioned something about, we these are the stories we tell ourselves, and I totally agree with you on that front. We do tell ourselves these stories, but knowing that, okay, what do we do about it? How do we bridge the gap and start to find ways to come together? Because I also believe, I'd be interested what your thoughts are on this. I believe that we are stronger together. That when we're divided and when we can't find common ground and a foundation to build upon, we are less able to move forward and have good conversation that's going to take us places that we've never been before. Thoughts on that?
Well, exactly. But at the same time, we do that. Our brains, we have all different kinds of things in our life, like you're talking about in business and in politics or religion, or. But then again, we might have all these differences, but yet we all, go to the Jacksonville Jaguar game and we're all high-fiving, or I pass you in Walmart and you're wearing a Jaguars jersey and I don't know who you are, and I go, "Yo, go Jags," and we high-five and we bond. So be careful believing that things are as bad as you're being told they are. I would dare you to, I'll give you 1 hour to go out in Flagler County and find and be killed by a terrorist. You couldn't do it. You wouldn't know where to go, or how would I start, whatever. I mean, so yet people are worried about terrorism and being killed by a terrorist and things. And these are the same people that are driving down I-95 at 80 miles an hour texting, and they're worried about being killed by a terrorist.
How about take personal responsibility?
Well, be your own parent.
Be your own parent.
Yeah.
And I like that. That's something I think that because you said it that way, that's something I'm going to be thinking about as I think about how I show up in the community and how I show up to certain conversations. And when I feel that pull to react to something, I'm going to think about that. Be your own parent, right? So take personal responsibility, control my own actions, and really try to remember that at the end of the day, I have a choice. I have a choice on how I'm going to respond to whatever happens to me, whatever is happening in the community, that's happening to my family. I have a choice in what I do and what actions I take from that point forward.
And you have a choice on what you worry about. And think, is this going to matter a year from now? Or can I do anything about that? Or does that really apply to me and what's important to me? So I think once you structure your own mind into what's important to you, who's important to you, what your cause is, what your real core beliefs are in your heart and soul, and you surround those with your things you're going to worry about or whatever, because those are things you have control over. So don't let the media, don't let these, other people that are, that you think are wacko, but yet you just high-fived a guy in Walmart walking by him and, hey, brother, I mean, so keep it in perspective, and things are a lot better than they are. The world is not going to hell.
You heard it right there from David Ayers. So, David, we are up against a break. We're going to take a brief break to thank our amazing sponsors. My friends, you are listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat. Don't you go anywhere. We will be right back. All right, we're back. And again, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am in the studio today. I've actually got two very special guests at this very moment. I've got David Ayers, and I've got Candy here with us as well. She's going to join part of the conversation here. So, if you were listening to the first part, we're really focusing on emotions, feelings, and how we can manage our emotions and bridge the gap that we tend to be experiencing right now with, so much going on both locally, nationally, and throughout the world. And what we can do ourselves to work through that, to learn some important lessons, and how we can build unity and learn to communicate more effectively. And also, one of the things we talked about on the first part of the show was the impact of social media and how that is influencing and kind of creating that bubble, if you will, that echo chamber, and why it's important to recognize that and know how some of those thoughts and things are actually coming into your ecosystem, and to be aware of that, right? Be aware of it. So I thought we'd kick off this second section with really talking about ownership and taking personal responsibility. So Candy, during the break, we were just kind of yakking about that a little bit. And you mentioned a personal situation. I won't go into the details, but a personal situation that you're currently dealing with. And I just wanted to find out from you how you handle your own emotions and responses to difficult situations that come up, that bubble up. So walk me through what you do personally and how you deal with things like that.
I think what you said before about knowing what is yours to take on and what is not is important. And for me personally, it's a lot of compartmentalization, I think. When something happens, I have to differentiate if this is something emotional that's happening, or if this is the best way to say it, I guess, is this really happening, or is this what I'm perceiving is happening? Is this as big of a deal as it feels to me, or is this emotions versus facts? So I think once you walk through that and decide what is coming from a side that's purely emotional, it's easier, I'll say, to detach yourself and separate what has to happen versus how you feel about what's happening.
Okay, that brings up a great point. So I would love to hear from you how you work through that process. So can you briefly talk to us about how you detach from that situation? What are you actually doing? So if you think about it, because I want to, let's just say this is a coaching opportunity,
Gotcha.
Right? I need you to coach me because I can learn from you right now. Walk me through what that looks like for you.
Well, first of all, I am nobody's coach. I can tell you what I do.
Please.
I think the first thing that I ask myself is, like you were saying before, how long is this going to affect me? Is this a one-day decision that I need to make? Is this a decision that's going to affect this week, this month? And then you kind of can gauge how much effort you need to put into it.
Okay.
And then how does it affect the people around me, and how is that going to affect me? If I have something that I have to make a decision, but I know it's going to affect this person and that person, I need to now decide how my actions need to align with what that person needs. And sometimes that's a messy process, and sometimes you don't even get through that before something else hits you, and you have to, realign and try to figure out where to go from there.
So I think it's really interesting, David. I want to hear your point of view on this, but I just wanted to state I think it's really interesting that you actually you almost go to a place of logic versus reaction, right? Because the reaction would be that I get pulled into a situation and I become emotional. And when I become emotional, my emotions take over versus my logic. But you're able to kind of think through the different parts, right? Who is this going to impact? How are my actions going to potentially affect this relationship or this situation? And I really appreciate the fact that you're able to do that. I think that's pretty remarkable. And I don't want to make any assumptions here, but like you said, it can be messy at times. So it's probably not a perfect science, but the fact that you are working through it, I think that, and you have the wherewithal to think about that, I think is so powerful. David, what do you think about what Candy just shared, and how does that align with maybe your own process, if you have one, when you're also pulled into a situation?
Well, I mean, a lot of different situations and a lot of different personalities and things like that. I kind of look at what would I like the end result of this encounter to be. Sometimes the best way to go about it is to shut up and not do anything. And also, I always put a ratio of emotion versus fact or logic to it.
Okay.
Sometimes there could be a 10% fact and 1,000% emotion on something, which is the worst time to engage. And so what is it you want the end result to be? Do you want better understanding on something? Do you want somebody to do something? Do you want to be critical of somebody, but make it positive so they don't feel like they've just been degraded or something?
Okay.
So there's, you got to think ahead of the game in it. But I think that's management, that's leadership. Those are all those sort of things because like little kids are great because they don't care about any of that crap. They just, they just tell you what's on their mind and they're honest about it, which is the most beautiful thing because they won't, they'll just, go with that. But I think that's the main thing is truly listening, because if we don't truly listen to somebody, we don't really understand what they really are saying. And our reaction could be totally off base only because we didn't listen to them first.
Often we do make, I said, I don't like to make assumptions. Often we do make assumptions about what someone else is saying, what someone else's meaning happens to be without fully listening. And I agree with you, which hence the reason why I wear the shirt that I do, because it's a reminder to me to be in the moment, to be fully present. I like to say to be where my feet are, meaning that I'm not sitting here with the two of you, but I'm actually in another room or thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, right? I am here listening because I want to learn and I want to be challenged in my own ideas, my own beliefs. Because again, as it was stated toward the beginning, there isn't one of us that has it all figured out. We might think we do, but we don't have it all figured out. And I think in order for us to be able to move to the next step of understanding, listening is really key to that. Listening to understand versus listening to find my spot where I can jump in and then say something. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the whole you have two ears and one mouth for a reason kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you were talking about how to decide how much something should affect you or how much emotion you should put into it. I'm not a huge Swiftie, but I did hear something she said in an interview once that really stuck with me, which was, you have to think of your time as a luxury. Not everyone deserves it. Not everyone has put in enough to have the capital for you to care about whether or not this is something that affects them. And I think once you start deciding, this is someone who has been in my life for 20 years, so this deserves more emotion than this person who I haven't talked to for 6 years that now wants to be part of my life. Once you start to look at the amount that they have given to your life or the situation has given to your life, you can kind of gauge how much you deserve to give to them.
That's a really interesting point. So let me ask you this, Candy, I'm going to start with you since you are in the conversation now. I know this wasn't what you were expecting, but I'm so glad that you're here having the conversation with David and me. So tell me, and I just want you to be flat out candid here. What triggers you? Give me something that triggers you that you just know it does.
Like something that I know I'll get upset about immediately?
If it triggers you, it gets the emotions up, right? You can feel it rising up in your body. What is something that would do that?
Being told I am not good enough to do something.
Okay. So I want you to hold that thought. David, what triggers you? Same exact scenario. What gets under your skin and gets the temperature rising?
Challenging integrity.
Give me a quick example, if you can.
Well, if somebody thinks you cheated them and you didn't, or if somebody thinks you lied to them and you didn't, or somebody has a different perception for some reason that isn't true, I will defend that to the death.
Okay. So with what both of you just said, those trigger points, if you will, tell me when that happens, right? When you're triggered, when someone is saying that, when you're not good enough for this, right? How do you regulate your emotions in that moment?
I don't know that I do sometimes, honestly.
Okay.
I think that one of the main things that happens is like if somebody says, I don't think you can handle taking on that extra shift kind of thing. The first thing I think is, well, why would you think that? Number one. And number two, I don't think I take it as, I think it triggers me, but then I think it becomes more of motivation. Like, well, I'm about to show you that I can.
Okay.
That kind of thing. So I think that maybe that's me taking a negative and trying to turn it into a positive. But in that moment, yeah, deep breaths sometimes, walking away sometimes.
Okay.
Learning to keep my mouth shut. That's helpful. But yeah, it takes a minute to, I think that everything is a big deal for like 10 seconds. And then once you get past those 10 seconds, the counting down or whatever you need to do, then it's easier to move past the emotion of it and get to, well, what now?
Okay. All right. That's really good. All right, David. So I've challenged your integrity, and you said that you're going to defend your position. So when you feel it, you know it's happening in your body, right? I know you know it. I can feel it myself when it happens. What are you doing to regulate? Or do you just go?
No, what I do is, and there's certain times, in this business, when you're kind of high profile and doing radio talk shows for years, of course, you're going to cross people. And on social media, I look at it like some people, I hate that, David Ayers, he's whatever the whole thing is. I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, then I look at it and I think, well, if I was them and I looked at it the way they see it, I wouldn't like me either. So I don't blame them.
Okay. Interesting.
How's that for nullifying it? So then I can move on. So I can respect them. Like if that's what they think, that's what they believe, then okay. If I were you, I wouldn't like me either.
See, that's really interesting because that stops it right there. It's like, what am I going to say now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
You've drawn the line in the sand there.
Yeah, no hard feelings.
Yeah, no hard feelings. That's really interesting. And I think that, and you've said this in the conversation, but I think it's an important thing to bring out that just because, whether it's on social media or at a city council meeting or anywhere else for that matter, just because someone makes a comment that you don't agree with or that does trigger you, that doesn't mean that comment is worthy of or requires a response. Now, you may think that I need to defend my position. But do you really, in that moment, is that the right venue? Is that the right place to do so? Are you going to be responding from a place of emotion? And is that truly the right tact to take? So I'll give you one super quick example. I know we're coming up on the end of the show here, but I had posted something that I had put out to the members of the Flagler Tiger Bay Club, and I had received a number of responses to that post. Many of them were hey, thank you for sharing that. They shared it themselves. But there were a couple responses that were really triggering, and I opted not to respond because I took a step back. I took deep breaths, and I said, not every comment needs a response. And I hope that's helpful for you. David, Candy, I want to thank you both for participating in today's show.
Absolutely.
Such a great conversation. David, any last comments before we wrap?
No, just listen. Jay's shirt says it all. Listen to people open-mindedly. It's also entertaining to listen to people with different viewpoints than you. And just, listening to somebody, truly listening to somebody is the best form of flattery you can ever have.
Ooh, that's good. Candy, any last comments from you before we wrap?
Mostly just like he said with the listening. And also I have learned that the more you stay quiet, the more people like to fill the space. And so your quietness and listening, you find out a whole lot more information than if you were trying to get your point across.
That is so very true. All right. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Business Minds Coffee Chat. I know you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I definitely learned a lot. And we will be back next Saturday morning at 8:30. And my friends, until then, keep learning and growing and keep doing the work to reach your potential. Take care, all.